So Henry Tudor won the Battle of Bosworth Field. Richard III was dead. The crown was on Henry's head, but here's a problem nobody talks about. Winning the crown was the easy part. Keeping it? That was nearly impossible, because half of England still thought he was a nobody with no right to be king, and they were already planning to get rid of him. Welcome back to the History of Britain. Last time we followed the War of the Roses all the way to Bosworth Field, where Henry Tudor defeated Richard III and became King Henry VII. If you haven't seen that one, I will leave a link up here. Today we're looking at what happened next, how a man with one of the weakest claims in English history built a dynasty that would rule for over 100 years. Henry's first problem was simple. Almost nobody believed he should be king. His claim came through his mother, Margaret Beaufort, and that line had been officially barred from the throne. He'd won the crown on a battlefield, not in a court, and in medieval England that meant one thing. Someone else could do exactly the same to him. So Henry moved fast. He married Elizabeth of York, the eldest daughter of Edward IV. This was the masterstroke. It united Lancaster and York into one family. The red rose and the white rose became the Tudor rose, red and white together. Suddenly his children would have a claim from both sides, but not everyone was convinced. Within 2 years of taking the throne, Henry faced his first serious challenge, a boy called Lambert Simnel. Simnel was a young boy, probably around 10 years old, who was trained by a priest to impersonate the Earl of Warwick, a Yorkist with real claim to the throne. The real Earl of Warwick was locked up in the Tower of London, but that didn't stop the plot. Simnel was taken to Ireland, crowned as King Edward VI in Dublin, and an army was raised to invade England. Henry crushed the rebellion at the Battle of Stokefield in 1487, and here's where you see how clever Henry was. Instead of executing the boy, he gave Simnel a job in the royal kitchen. He turned his enemy into a servant. The message was clear: you're not worth killing, you're nobody. But then came a much more dangerous pretender, Perkin Warbeck. Warbeck claimed to be Richard of York, one of the princes in the Tower, the boys who had disappeared under Richard III. If true, his claim to the throne was stronger than Henry's. Warbeck had support from the King of France, the Holy Roman Emperor, and even the King of Scotland, who gave him his own cousin in marriage. This wasn't a boy in a kitchen, this was an international conspiracy. It took Henry nearly 80 years to deal with Warbeck. There were invasions, plots and betrayals. Eventually Warbeck was captured in 1497 and later executed. But those 8 years showed just how fragile Henry's grip on power really was. Once the pretenders were dealt with, Henry focused on something less dramatic but far more important: money and control. England was broke after decades of civil war. The treasury was empty. The nobles were powerful and dangerous. Henry needed to change both of those things. First, he avoided war wherever possible. War was expensive and Henry hated spending money. Instead, he used marriages and treaties to keep England safe. He arranged for his eldest son Arthur to marry Catherine of Aragon, a Spanish princess. This tied England to Spain, one of the most powerful countries in Europe. Second, he crushed the power of the nobility. He used a system of bonds and fines. Basically, if a noble stepped out of line, they owed the king enormous amounts of money. It made the nobles afraid to rebel, and it filled Henry's treasury at the same time. By the end of his reign, Henry VII had turned England from a bankrupt, war-torn mess into a stable, wealthy kingdom. He wasn't loved, he was feared, but it worked. In 1502, something happened that would change English history in ways nobody could have predicted. Arthur, Henry's eldest son, the heir to the throne, died. He was just 15 years old. That left Henry's second son as the future king, a loud, athletic, confident boy called Henry. And here's a detail that matters. When Arthur died, his widow, Catherine of Aragon, was still in England, and eventually young Henry would marry her. That one decision, a second son marrying his dead brother's wife, would lead to one of the biggest upheavals in English history. But we'll get to that next time. Henry VII doesn't get the fame of his son. There are no Hollywood films about him. But without him, there are no Tudors. He took a crown he arguably had no right to, defended it against every challenger, and left behind a stable, rich kingdom and a dynasty that would transform England. Next time, Henry VIII. 6 wives, a break with Rome, and the birth of the Church of England. If you're enjoying this series, then please like and subscribe. It really helps. And if you'd like to improve your English with me, one-to-one, my Preply link is in the description. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.